turn the microphone on, and then call to order the Wednesday, December 6th, 2023 meeting of the Basin Management Committee here in the Los Osos Community Services District Boardroom. Join me for the flag salute, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and with that, we'll get back in order and go to the roll call.
Yeah, let's Director Gibson.
Here.
Director Reinecke.
Here.
Alternate Director Cook.
Here.
And Vice Chair Cesena.
Here.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heimel. Okay, board member comments. Anyone have anything that they want to share? Nothing striking here. Okay, not yet. Okay.
Whoever just spoke, their microphone was off. So please make sure your microphone's on when you're speaking. Thank you.
Oh, that's a good point, but I didn't have it. I just was indicating I didn't have anything to say.
So we're going to have one little change in the agenda order today. We're going to take item 9E, the public review of the Title 19 draft, and move that up to agenda item 5, special presentation up near the top here, and then move on with the rest of our agenda. And we do need to accomplish several things on the agenda today, the sustainable yield estimate, the banking changes. So we're going to have to stay on target, and I want a full discussion of the Title 19 issue, but we have some time limitations. I need to leave by 3:15 in particular. So with that, we'll move on to special presentation agenda item 5, which is item 9E.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair Cesena. So we have here staff from the County Planning and Building Department to provide a presentation on the proposed amendments to Title 19 and Title 8 that came out of the Los Osos water offset study, which was presented to the BMC, I want to say in August. But I'll let them introduce themselves and then move forward with the presentation.
Great. Thanks, Dan. I just want to make sure you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Claire Momberger. I'm here today from County Planning and Building. I am managing the Title 19 and Title 8 updates. On screen today with me is Erilyn Singwald, Environmental Coordinator for the county. And I can be sensitive to the time constraints today. My presentation shouldn't be too brief. I'm really here to just share an overview of what the public draft looked like. And so I need to figure out how to share screen really quickly.
You have your presentation.
We are able to see your presentation.
Okay.
It's just not full screen.
Okay. Are you seeing it now?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. Thank you. So yeah, thanks for that introduction, Dan. Yeah, I'm just speaking to the overview of the public review draft that was released. If there are any questions, I'd really be happy to take them at the end of the presentation, so I can get the information out there. So please jot a question down if you have one. A little bit of background to this project. In June of this year, a consultant hired by the county, Madaus Water Management, completed the Title 19 offset study that was published on June 30th. And your committee was extremely helpful in helping us complete that study. And we had a lot of input from your committee, which was very needed. And then on October 17th this year, the County Board of Supervisors requested draft amendments to the Title 19 offset program within the first quarter of the next calendar year. On November 27th, just a few weeks ago, we released the public review draft of what we're calling the Los Osos offset program amendments. All public comment is due to the county by December 31st. We tried to give as much time as possible for the public to review the draft ordinance amendments before we have to prepare for a hearing. And we are scheduled for a hearing with the County Board of Supervisors to present those draft amendments on February 27th of next year. Like I said, I just want to share a summary of amendments and share where these came from. The amendments were crafted out of the results of our Title 19 offset study. And then we also, back when my coworker presented the results of the study to the Basin Management Committee in August, and also when I gave the same presentation in August to the Los Osos Community Advisory Council, we were taking down public comments and questions, and those were included in the draft package, but were also used as input for crafting the ordinance amendments. The first I'd like to share here is an amendment to both our Title 8, which is the retrofit upon sale program, and our Title 19 retrofit to build program. We're changing the map to look a little bit more updated, but also to reflect the study area that was the boundary for our offset study. So on the left is the existing map, which shows the prohibition zone in the dashed line, prohibition zone exception areas in the dark gray, and then the basin boundary in the light gray. We're removing that map from both Title 8 and Title 19 and replacing with the map on the right, which has a dash line around the Los Osos urban reserve line. And then the dark blue line represents the basin plan area. Another amendment to both ordinances is some new fixture flow requirements. So for toilets, we are changing the requirement to be 1.6 gallon per flush toilets that must be installed to an effective flush rate of 1.0 gallon per flush. Effective flush rate that language is included to account for dual flush toilets that might be installed. And then shower heads must be, instead of 2.5 gallons per minute, must be installed at a rate of 1.5 gallons per minute. And the rest of the amendments I'll be speaking to are in Title 19, the retrofit to build program. This is the first there where we are currently, the ordinance does not allow offset credits or water savings to come from bathroom retrofits that are inside the prohibition zone. Because of the results of the study, which showed that there's still a lot of potential for retrofits and water savings within the prohibition zone, we are removing that from the existing ordinance, and then now proposing that the prohibition zone can be a source of water offset credits. The biggest reason is that the ordinance has not been amended for about 8 years, and that's when since that time, the technology has significantly improved, and so there are more water savings to be had. The next large change is the total amount of water offset savings required has changed for single family, multifamily, and mobile homes. There's still the 2-to-1 component where new builds must offset 2 times the amount of estimated water of the new development. And so the other large change with that is that the amount of savings required will be dependent upon the water source and also the size of the parcel when it comes to self-sourced parcels. The reason for that dependence upon the size of the parcel is to account for outdoor water use on properties that are served by a well on the property. There are four amendments that we are making to the program and how it's implemented. The first is that staff will conduct post-installation inspections at random. The second is that the department will be responsible for updating the total water savings requirement every 5 calendar years using the method that was established in the offset study. The third is that the department will conduct a pilot program to test an outdoor water conservation program. And the fourth is removing the requirements and tables from the ordinance itself and putting it into the program applications for easier access. And then I wanted to show, without getting too much into the details, there are some changes to how the water savings are calculated for each fixture. So for toilets, there's an equation in the bold down here at the bottom of the table. It's the same equation that our staff was using before, except we've just placed it into the program application for applicants to see. But also we have updated the average fixture usage there. That's the 13.8 down there to reflect the results of our offset study. And a similar thing occurred with the shower heads. The equation is in the bold there. Again, just placing it in the application for applicants to be made aware. And then the average shower usage was updated according to the results of the study. Those averages didn't come out of nowhere. If you're curious to where they came from, they're in the study and the sources are cited. And then the calculated savings for clothes washing machine retrofits has changed a bit. We, during the course of our study and also with public feedback from about the program over the past few years, we've received significant feedback on the assumptions associated with clothes washing machine water savings. The third kind of component of this equation here, the loads per year, used to be, or currently is a little over 300 loads per year, and that was based on a national average. We've now adapted the loads per year assumption to reflect something a little more applicable to Los Osos, using the residential end consumption survey by the U.S. Energy Information Association, where they have a ton of data outputs on water usage in homes, but they do have an output that allows you to narrow it down to a climate region. And so Los Osos is within a marine climate region, and 203 loads per year is the average assumption for clothes washer usage in the marine region. And finally, the calculated savings for hot water recirculation systems has changed a bit. Water savings with this kind of install come from reducing the distance between the hot water source, the hot water heater, and each individual plumbing fixture in the home that uses hot water. And so we are proposing that applicants are required to submit a fixture diagram with a list of the pipe diameter and length measurements of all plumbing fixtures in the home, and then printouts of the EPA's hot water volume calculator with before and after configurations that are all prepared by the licensed plumber who does the install. It's quite a bit more involved, but we think that makes it more verifiable and hopefully increases public confidence in calculating the water savings from an installation like this. And that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions, comments from any of the directors? Questions at all? Well, okay, I have a few. I guess that I get mostly clarifications that we're going to look for, and these came from staff. And let me see. Let me ask. One, a minor comment, aerator definition. Let's see, where are we at? 19070428A3. It seems like there's two different aerator definitions, 1 gallon and a 1.2 given. So maybe that could be clarified.
Chuck, is that in our Title 19?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see, section 8.91, the definitions. 020 right up front, definitions. 4D. Aerators, lavatory sinks that do not exceed 1 gallon a minute. I believe somewhere else it talks about 1.2.
Okay, that might be, we're not changing any requirements when it comes to aerator installations, but if you're saying a 1.2 instead of a 1.0, that could be a type.
Just
like
yeah, minor thing.
Yeah, so I will look into that. Thank you.
Okay. Then in let's see, section 19.07042, 8B, with the deletion of the text outside the prohibition zone, this opens up the retrofit opportunities to existing structures in the prohibition zone, but it's not clear in the ordinance if new building permits will be issued within the prohibition zone using the water offset program. Will the Coastal Commission need to approve the ordinance? And how does the growth management ordinance fit in with all of this? Because the Title 19 updates tell us what we need to do, but not when the building and what we expect to come out of the growth management ordinance. The two kind of have to go together. So do we expect new building permits, I guess, and does the Coastal Commission have to approve this ordinance?
So
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and take a shot at that. And then maybe
Yeah,
Sure.
let's let Erin speak to that.
So there are kind of two separate areas that we're talking about here. So there is the section of Title 19, which does not allow for building permits to be issued within the prohibition zone. So it's effectively over, calling 0% growth rate in Los Osos. And that is not going to change until we take the Los Osos community plan to Coastal Commission, and that is certified by the Coastal Commission. And that would include, like we've talked about with BMC before, at the BMC staff meetings, a whole adaptive management process to annually monitor resources and adjust growth rates as necessary. Then the presentation today is on just retrofit to build program. So it would not remove that 0% growth rate that's currently in place in Los Osos, and it won't change until the community plan is updated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, nor does Coastal Commission. This is our building code. So Title 19 is the building code. And the Coastal Commission does not have authority over that, nor does it have authority over our growth management ordinance. That's not part of the local coastal program. In a slight departure, the Los Osos community plan is going to reference a growth rate as it's proposed right now. And as Erlen said, that growth rate, along with the necessity for doing retrofit to build under certain circumstances early in the process, is there to sync the development up with good adaptive management practices here at the BMC. So we want to maintain consistency. We want to not let growth get out any faster than the water resource can sustain.
Yes, making sure the pieces all fit. And I just
Correct.
kind of want to make sure
exactly
what relates to what. Okay.
Exactly.
Next comment, 19.07.042.8B.4. Please elaborate on the meaning of and the process associated with the text or through other projects as authorized by the department director.
Yeah, so that's an existing allowance in our Title 19 program, where we have structured it to be, where someone would retrofit existing plumbing fixtures in an existing home that they're responsible for tracking down. There is an existing allowance in the program where someone may propose a different route for an offset program, but they would have to prove to the director of the department that the requirement of what total water savings could be met, and that would have to be verifiable and verified by staff as well. That's an existing allowance. It's nothing changing there.
Okay, I guess I just wondered how open that process was, if there was opportunity for public comment, given that it would be sort of an outside the box proposal.
I think if that, Chuck, I think if that did come up, it would come up in the land use permit process.
Okay.
And so, there could be some kind of review on that.
Okay. And the last comment, or the next one, has to do with kind of the same sort of thing, just making sure that there's a process for comment. And that is 19.07.042.8B5. And assuming that the county staff is including this text so that they don't have to go through an ordinance amendment to make changes, which is understandable, is there going to be a process where the water purveyors or the public can review and comment on changes prior to implementation?
And so just for everyone else to give context, you're referring to the updates that should be made every
5 years.
Every 5 years.
Right.
And that's just to the total water savings requirement, and also to the, what averages might change depending on industry knowledge. Like you said, Chuck, we have included that here, and so that an entire ordinance amendment isn't necessary. And the reason being is that the public has seen the offset study, and we've had public feedback and participation by the BMC on the method for updating those total savings every 5 years. And so the way we go about updating is not going to change. Not proposed to change, just those final outputs.
So I would add to that, I don't see any problem, as we'll have to do basically a technical memo every 5 years to update the number. These are just the parameters of it. I don't see any problem of bringing that to BMC staff, to bringing it to the BMC as an information item, but it is a mechanical, this is not a matter of policy. This is a matter of getting the numbers right.
Updating. Yeah. Okay. Last comment. Page 3 of 11 in the table for the Los Osos groundwater basin retrofit to build requirements for single family self-source development. It appears that using the parcel size as the denominator in the equation reduces the offset requirement substantially as the size of the parcel increases. Larger the parcel, the less the offset requirement. Was this the intent of the equation? And I think you kind of talked about wells and for larger parcels. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, the intent of the equation is to, account for outdoor use. Outdoor water use is going to change significantly depending on, the size of somebody's property. And so the intent there, the 90, if everyone has it open, the 92 number there comes from the indoor water usage in the study. And then from, I think it's table 5-1. And then the parcel size is added to the equation here to calculate total water savings to account for outdoor water use on a self-source parcel. That was the intent there.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the dais here? Okay, we'll go to public comment for agenda item 5, the Title 19 draft review.
If you'd like to make a public comment and you're in the boardroom, please come up to the podium. And if you're online, please raise your hand. All right, I have one online.
Okay.
All right, Patrick, you just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Patrick McGibney, Chair of the Los Osos Sustainability Group. The updated Title 19, unfortunately, is as flawed as the original one was because it's all based on estimates. There's never been any studies conducted to validate whether Title 19's 2-to-1 offset actually saved any water. In the BMC's letter to the County and Coastal Commission of July 21st, 2021, stating your concern about the sustainability of our basin and the reliability of Title 19, you asked the county to conduct a study and to, quote, investigate or revisit the assumptions and arithmetic used for these conversion or conservation offsets, which the water purveyors feel are in error, end of quote, which they were. No study has yet been done. The information given to Modis to compile this update was based on assumptions and estimates, and in reading the updated version page after page is riddled with the words assumptions, assumed, estimated, estimates. Neither Title 19 nor the BMC can manage our basin to sustainability by assuming and estimating critical metrics. The basin plan even says on page 102, section 6.3.2, and I quote, it will be critical to basin management of the basin on accurate data rather than estimates, end of quote. The assumption Title 19 makes that our community washes laundry 203 times per year is still a little high. It's based on Energy Star estimates of statewide use and from a publication by Cal Green that quotes the statewide average of 300 to 400 washes per year, but that was based on a family of 4, not the 2.2 we have in Los Osos. In a letter that Kylie Hensley wrote me in 2021, and she's with Planning and Building, she wrote, and I'm quoting, I think 200 loads is a more reasonable estimate for Los Osos than the 392 loads assumption currently being used for the Retrofit to Build program. This number is consistent with the assumptions used by County Public Works in their annual reporting for their water conservation rebates, end of quote. And again, this is all based on assumptions. It makes no difference how much water we save. As long as we're still dealing with seawater intrusion, we're pumping too much. Our basin is still suffering from seawater intrusion, and we're still in a state of overdraft. And until that changes, the Offset to Build program should be termed Offset to Sustainability and be based on accurate data. Thank you.
There is no further public comment online.
Okay, we'll go to public comment here in the room.
Richard Margetson. 15 years ago, first ordinance came out, severely flawed. Mr. Gibson may remember it took almost 3 years of public comment before staff finally admitted there were major mistakes and came to the Board of Supervisors and corrected those. This is a busy time of the year for me, so I've only had a chance to just go through this quickly. But Chuck, the 1.0 comment, those errors are on page 5 of 7. And 5 of 7 and 3 of 7. Then if you go to the, let's see, page 7 of 11 of the forms that people would need to fill out. In the top section, average water savings per 1 toilet replaced per household. In the column, 6 gallons reduced to 1 or changed to a 1 gallon toilet. I think under item number 3 of 3 toilets per household. I think 12 is the wrong number. I think it's at least double that. And then I did go to the back of the staff report to look at the public comments that were given. And my public comment about the size of households in the mobile home parks, the response from county was, at this time, the U.S. Census data provides the county with the most reliable and consistent source of population data for Los Osos and is used to develop program averages. How about thinking outside the box one of these times? I pretty much gave a very thorough comment that information is available probably with 1 hour's work and 4 phone calls. I actually have the phone books for both Daisy Hill and Moore Shores, and the numbers that I have in there are absolutely accurate at 1.51 and 1.52. So we're requiring a mobile home that wants to be built to come up with 200 gallons of water savings, 75% of a single household. But the average occupancy is 1.5. Seriously, this needs to be reviewed. Probably will have other comments in the future, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments here in the boardroom? Okay, yes, I was kind of surprised. Okay, sorry.
Some of us creak when we get up. It takes a little while. Good afternoon. Glad to be here and see everyone. I have just a few comments on this report. The Title 19 program, oh, and Becky McFarland, the Title 19 program uses estimates. And the one that stands out to me is that the agricultural usage data comes from the 2022 Basin Report. We all know that none of the agricultural usage is metered. Most private wells are not monitored or metered either. And we see in one of the charts in this report that homes with their own supply use a lot more water. And I'm not sure if that's, I mean, it's when you're not paying the water company and you do pay the energy bill, you may not be saving as much, but it also is, those are probably on larger properties. So there's more outside watering. Excuse me, there's a fly. I think beyond this Title 19 program, there needs to be monitoring and conservation programs instated on agriculture and private wells that rely on our basin. It's still the same basin, and we don't have those exact numbers of how much water is being taken out. Also, I was reading through here and it said the required offset was 900 gallons per day back in up to 2014, and then it was lowered to only 300 gallons per day. Why? It says because we conserved, so we were making the retrofitting be only a third of the savings that it was. I say, I don't know the number right now of what they are making them save, but it should be that 900 gallons. We haven't solved our basin problems. We should be saving as much water as possible. People are talking about the pipeline going, yeah, any drop of water helps. We'll raise this back up to 900 gallons per day. There would be some help. Under the heading of wastewater management within this report, it states that the county operates the water recycling facility and returns treated wastewater back to the basin at Broderson. 437 acre feet in 2022. We all know from basin meetings that the mound of recycled water under the Broderson leach field has stalled at 50%. At 100%, we were supposed to be able to get 300 acre feet out of that, but it's stalled. And so that water is not going into the basin. That should be stricken from this report because it's not true. And I'm sure everyone in this room is for truth. The county has nearly finished plans for park and schools to use recycled water. That's also in this heading. It's been 8 years and the plans are not completed. They're 90% completed, but they're not. So please update these things and get only the truth in the report.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, I don't know if this is the right place or time. I agree with all these.
Could you give us your name, please, for
My
the
name
record?
is Andrea Peck. I live at 1435 10th Street. And what I have is actually too much water in my in my yard that runs through. I don't know if you're familiar with the area, but along near Baywood Elementary, along coming from 11th at El Moro, going through 10th through 9th and down to 8th, there is a flooding problem. And so I agree with all these retrofitting. We have all these tankless stuff and all that. However, just in the last rain, a moderate estimate would be about 30 to 50,000 gallons of water running through my yard. And so, it floods it flooded my garage, it flooded my neighbor's garage, it flooded the garage on 8th Street. It goes all the way down and it's just wasted. And so I'm wondering if there's any attempt to recapture that as a larger amount. And the last thing I wanted to ask about was something I found online, which was that there was supposed to be a recapturing of water at 8th Street and El Moro, where the city thing is there, and maybe possibly using the Baywood Elementary basin to, keep some water and recharge the aquifer. Did that ever go into place as far as like I've got the printout of what it was, and I just wonder if that was ever used or not, or considered.
We'll address some of that. Actually, I probably should have taken all of that under public comments for items not appearing on the agenda.
So I'm sorry to be at the wrong time here, but
no, we'll take note of flooding issues around here. Pine Avenue, we've still got some things to be resolved.
Yeah.
And that capture, it's not on the front burner, but it's not gone away, I don't believe. So
yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments on agenda item 5, the Title 19 retrofits? Okay, we'll bring it back to the committee and accept this with a reminder that comments are due at the end of December to Claire by December 31st. And
Thank you, Chuck.
Sure.
December 31st.
Oh, sorry. I actually did have one question. This is Beth Renicky, S&T director. So just I would really like to see something tangible as far as the success of this offset program so far. I don't know that really has been shared. I'm sure it exists, but I'm just wondering, I understand that there is some sensitivity to usage and personal data and that sort of thing, but is it possible for us to do something anonymously that really highlights the actual savings that we're seeing currently from the Title 19 that we already have in place? I know there are a lot of assumptions, and I'm really wondering, I would like to see something that indicates that we are being successful with this program. And a part of this goes back to just a pretty quick analysis I did on water usage in the 3 purveyors. And Golden State Water is the only purveyor that's adding new development under this Title 19 program. And if you look at their usage over time, it's also the only purveyor whose usage is kind of stalling. The conservation is less. And in fact, if you look, they're about 43% versus the CSD, who I think is around 47, closer to 50%. And they're actually using almost the same amount of water. And that has actually, I can provide the graph just for context, but it's an interesting analysis. And I'm wondering maybe if we should look into that data point as well, because it's probably the most basic way for us to measure these offsets with new building that's currently happening.
Yeah, I know Erlen's on the line here. The study of the Title 19 program did look at, how water usage has changed. I think one thing to remember is we have to look at this as an average, right? This is really only doable in average because in terms of the number of individuals in a house, the size of the house, the personal habits of folks, all those things affect water use even indoors to a degree. So the study did look at it. I think that's a really good comment to justify the existence of a retrofit to build program. I know we have done that in the Title 19 study that led to these changes. So with Erlen on the line, we'll just make sure that we bring that up in the staff presentation when we bring it forward. I think I'm sure that comment got recorded, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it seems like the more specific data is tied to a point, that the more reliable it's going to be. I mean, I agree with the difficulty of trying to gauge the variabilities of human interactions, and but without trying to dial into specifics, actual savings are hard to really get a hold on.
I think, Chuck, I think what we see, one of the compelling things is if you look at the overall water production, the water use among all purveyors, with the massive retrofitting in the prohibition zone as required by the sewer, we're seeing significant reductions. Those indicate that going to low flow fixtures saves water.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that's the basic rationale under retrofit to build. And we built, I remember as we discussed the institution of this many years ago, we specifically built in the 2-to-1 so that we were assured of achieving 1-to-1. And this is I don't know if it's the only one that's 2-to-1 in the county, but it's one of few if it isn't the only one.
Okay, with that, we'll go on to agenda item 6, the consent agenda, consisting of a budget update and invoice register and the approval of the minutes from the October 18th meeting. Anyone have any comments on the minutes or the budget update? Or Mr. Heimel, did you have anything you wanted to bring forward at this time on that?
Really nothing specific. I think it's a pretty standard, our meeting minutes from the last meeting, which I don't think we took any specific action, and then just the outstanding sort of invoices. There is one invoice in there it's flagged for the BMC's approval because it was above the budgeted amount for that task. However, another task that the BMC's hydrogeologist did have in their budget had excess funding. And so we brought this to the BMC staff, and they were supportive of allowing taking to the BMC the consideration of allowing to use unspent funds from one task for BMC hydrogeologist activities for a different task for BMC hydrogeologist activities.
Okay, well, if we have no additional comments from any of the directors, we'll go to public comment for the consent agenda.
If you'd like to make a public comment and you're online, please raise your hand. And if you're in the boardroom, please come up to the podium. There is no public comment online.
Okay, and none here in the boardroom, so we'll entertain a motion to approve that agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, consent agenda is approved. Public comments for items not on the agenda.
If you'd like to make a public comment and you're online, please raise your hand. And if you're in the boardroom, please come up to the podium. All right, Jeff, you just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Edwards, and I wanted to just cover a couple facts about Los Osos and water. For starters, the population in Los Osos now is approximately 14,500 people. It's not 16,000 people, which I've heard offered up. Additionally, the number of people or number of residential units per acre foot is approximately 6 to 7 new single-family homes per acre foot. And if you look at our projected build-out numbers over the next 20 plus years, we're going to be building at about 60 to 70 units a year. And that equates to 215 acre feet in total. So that's the additional demand that will be created over time and likely at a plus or minus 1% growth rate, as you've heard. Secondly, I'd like to talk about the reasons we are shifting pumping to the east. One is that Los Osos is not one, the groundwater basin is not one large bathtub. It has both vertical and horizontal strata. We know mostly about the horizontal strata, zones A through E. But what's not discussed very much is the vertical cut that is established by strand B of the Los Osos Fault. This is a north-south, basically bisects Los Osos. And that's one of the reasons, another reason that we move wells to the east. And then lastly, is that easterly wells have access to the creek compartment, which is water rich. So those are that reasons there. Lastly, I wanted to mention a little bit about the Intertie project, the State Water Project, Intertie. And there is significant capacity in the Chorro Valley pipeline. And it's not owned by Morro Bay. Morro Bay simply rents some space or capacity in the pipeline. And Los Osos doesn't need any of Morro Bay's table allocation of about, they have 1,313 acre feet. There are 11 subcontractors participating within our county. There's a half a dozen potential options for Los Osos to secure table A water. And then as to reliability, it's averaged 60% over the life of the project. And as most of you know, we only really need it when it's abundant. We'll take it, and when it's not, we'll forego it and rely on groundwater. And then lastly, this is a cooperative project between the LOCSD, who is running point, and Golden State Water Company, who will join the project at some juncture. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Patrick, you just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Patrick McGibney again with the Los Osos Sustainability Group. I just want to point out again that it really makes no difference how much water we are conserving and saving. We have done that a lot over the last decade or two, but the point being that's important is that we still have seawater intrusion. And seawater intrusion is a consequence of an overdrafted basin. So regardless of all the work that we're doing, we need to save more water, and we also need to use less water. Mr. Gibson, in one of the public meetings that we had probably 10 years ago almost, I asked him a question. Are we saving water so we can save the basin, or are we saving water so we can build more? And he said, well, both actually. Well, there is no both. Right now, the basin is overdrafted. All the water we're saving should be staying in the basin until we see that we have stopped seawater intrusion, which is ruining our basin. So thank you very much. That's my comment.
There's no further public comment. I'm sorry, there is. I apologize. All right, Emily, you just have to unmute yourself.
Just real quickly, Emily Miggins. I mean, how do we secure numbers on how many, what our population is and per capita usage? And I'm just saying this because I just came hot off my tennis shoe heels, seeing Becky fly by down to the meeting, and met with a young mom, distressed young mom, burned out of her home. Her home was an illegal shed, okay, here in our community, Los Osos. And further to that, with her little child, her husband, before that, she was living in an RV, and she said something so naturally, not knowing, what I'm involved in or anything else. She just said, you don't start figuring out things until you meet older people with gray hair. Because I said, it's illegal to rent because of things like fire danger. It's against code to rent in RVs. What is our county doing to actually figure out how to rein all of this in, because as we know, not only the dangers, right, for young families like this, right? And she's got now SLO County Social Services, Red Cross, and support. But how do we actually know what our water use footprint is, or projected water use footprint could be if people are illegally renting? And yeah, we know that there's housing shortages, lack of affordable housing, etc. But I mean, what are we actually doing about all these illegal units on people's properties and renting out, which, as we all know, Coastal Commission opines to, when we build things like extra bedroom, 2,000 square foot guest houses, or, additions. How do we actually know what's going on? Thanks.
There's no further online public comment.
Okay, we have some here in the boardroom.
Richard Margetson. Little disappointed that there was no response from county staff on any of the comments made on your agenda item on the retrofit ordinance updates. That has been typical in the past, especially when there's errors. But I looked at the front page of this. This was put out on November 27th. Today's December 6th. What was the rush to bring this to the BMC 9 days after it was published? Something this important to Los Osos. And I have to ask, probably did happen, maybe it didn't. Did all three purveyors staff have enough time in 9 days to thoroughly go through this, do an evaluation, run some equations, make some phone calls, have thorough input? Is this another one of the Los Osos drops on Los Osos in December, so we can get it to the board of supervisors, get it approved, and then spend time in the future getting it corrected? I'm really disappointed that staff had no comments after on any of the comments that were made. I don't believe that's what they're there for. I know the comments were taken at the last meeting and put in the appendix, but it would have been nice to have heard them live. Thank you.
Becky McFarland. I too still have questions about the actual usage of water. We're told that 2.
Wait, are we going? Okay, maybe I should have stopped this earlier. We're on public comments for items not appearing on the agenda.
Right. The water usage is not on the agenda, is it?
Okay, I thought maybe you were going back to the Title 19 study.
No, but
Okay.
From what we just heard too, I mean, that's
Okay.
coming from there. We're getting information from all over is it 38 gallons per person per day as per executive reports from here? Is it the Title 19 things at 150 gallons per household? That's 62.5 gallons per day. What is it? What is the real number? Is it the basin number? Is it the county's number? We'd like to know. We just heard someone say it'll take 215 acre feet of water for 70 new homes per year. Well, at the end of 10 years, that's 2,150 acre feet per year, right? Tell me if my math is wrong. Tell me what it is, because I'm not anyway. But the 200 acre feet per year for those new homes is what we're hoping to get from the pipeline. And yes, I mentioned pipeline, but I'm talking about water usage. We have one basin. It's stressed, it's ill, it's polluted. The metrics that we're supposed to be meeting are for the existing population. I've been told that at CSD meetings. I've been told that here. What is it? Is it existing and new? The basin can't support that. So we need to take care of it. We need those numbers. We need to know what it is, and people should be able to get online and find out. And yes, as Beth was saying, there's privacy issues. You don't have to put names of who's using what, but we'd like to know how much water is being used. And as Emily stated, there are so many illegal units going on in this town. There's about 50 Airbnbs that are illegal. We had 10 illegal hotel rooms down on 2nd Street that have been operating, and there's no one checking. You know, people are in RVs, people are in shacks. People are renting out cottages, and some of these are state and county workers that are doing this. So who's going to reel that in? Is that up to us to think on our neighbors? And I brought that up before. How unfair for us to have to do that. Also on these guest houses, home offices, whatever, there are no retrofits required for those. And they're getting slipped in. They're getting slipped in because counties working around how to escape the Coastal Commission for 2-bedroom homes. They're not bedrooms. Thank you.
Okay, any other public comment for items not appearing on the agenda? Okay, one thing I do want to remind people is that we do have numbers. We have the annual usage from the purveyors. We study that very, very clearly. We track that. We have an annual report that clearly details how we're trending, where we're at. I mean, it's not like there's a lack of numbers, almost too many numbers. But we do track exactly how much water is being used. Now, breaking it down to who's using what, that's a different issue. And but the big picture is we're tracking it, and I think that we're in an okay place. Anyway.
Chuck, is it okay if I make just a clarification on
Yes.
what, because I think my comment may have brought some of this up. I was really speaking more specifically to the current Title 19 offsets. Yes, I mean, it would be very interesting to know overall, like what our water usage is throughout the basin. But mostly, I mean, we are installing these new fixtures and they do have data. I mean, they should have data based on meters. I'm just curious why we don't see more of a kind of an outline. So, you know, a 1-for-1, like this was installed here for this new home, just to see what the actual comparison is. That was what I was talking about.
I thought that's where you were
Oh,
wanting.
okay,
No,
sorry.
that's what I was commented on earlier too. I just but when we get lost in all of the illegal developments and this and that, that's something else. It's a different issue. We're not going to be able to ferret out here. But the bottom line is that we are tracking, and our water usage has been trending down. So thanks everyone for continuing to do the good work. Okay, Executive Director's report.
Yes, thank you, Director Cesena. Happy to provide the Executive Director's report. We have some exciting progress to talk about in this report, and actually some pictures to share from progress that's being made on specific initiatives in the Los Osos Basin. The first, I don't know that the BMC definitely can't take total credit for it, but we did engage with the Department of Water Resources and actually lobbied for them to include us in their aerial electromagnetic survey, or AEM survey. And so those of you that were around a couple of weekends ago, I believe it was the weekend before Thanksgiving, may have seen a helicopter flying around Los Osos carrying this giant, I don't even know what you would call it, but an electromagnet, almost, yeah, giant loop, it's an electromagnet about half the size of a football field. And they were flying, presumably the flight lines shown on the right-hand side of this figure, collecting geophysical data that will help inform the BMC and other state agencies on the geology and the hydrogeology of the Los Osos Basin. So at least for science geeks like me, pretty exciting stuff. This is something that's being done all over the state, funded by the Department of Water Resources. Specifically, it's been focused on SGMA basins, or basins managed under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, but thanks to lobbying efforts from BMC and others in the community, we were able to get DWR to agree to fly our basin and adjudicated basin while they were in the area. So I'm excited to see the results. Unfortunately, the results won't be available for 9 months, so we're going to have to wait a bit, but this will be great data to improve our understanding of the basin and the tool sets that we use to help manage the basin. The other exciting update to share with the group is related to the Skyline monitoring well or wells. As we speak, these monitoring wells are under construction here in Los Osos. On the left, we've got a picture of the drill rig drilling the first well, or the deeper well at the east end of Skyline Drive. That was taken on Monday. It's my understanding that today they're drilling the shallower well, and should be wrapped up with the construction activities by the end of the week. So progress is the wells are being drilled rapidly. I haven't heard any issues with construction, so things are going well, pardon the pun. And this will allow us to have new dedicated monitoring wells. One, the deeper well will be in zone E, and then the shallower well will be in zone D. And this will give us a critical data point for a portion of our basin that has historically been impacted by seawater intrusion. Currently, we rely upon water quality data from the Rosina well, which is a nearby well, but that's a production well that has borehole leakage. And so it's a real challenge for us to get representative data from the different portions of the aquifer out of that well. And so with the construction of the Skyline well, we should be able to get much better data, much more reliable data to help us monitor the health of the basin in this critical portion. And I think, there are a couple other updates that are underlined in the executive director's report, but really these are the big initiatives that are underway, and happy to answer any questions.
Anything from the committee here? Okay, thank you for that. I guess we need public comment on the executive director's report. Do we have any of that?
If you'd like to make public comment and you're online, please raise your hand, and in the boardroom, come up to the podium. Jeff, you just have to unmute yourself.
Thank you again. Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Edwards, and I had just a couple items on the ED report. And first one is we've been anticipating the GIS well identification database to come forward, and I'm not sure what the holdup is. I understand that it's complete and has been completed for some time, so I'd really appreciate understanding when that might surface. If you'll recall, this is going to identify the location of all the known water supply wells in the community overlying our basin, which I think will help. I think it has to help in terms of management. And then ultimately, I'd like to see this database used as a beginning format to advance a well abandonment program. If we can eliminate many of the unused or little used wells, I think that would be a positive thing. And then I often hear how we, complaints about how do we know what all the unmetered agricultural properties are using, and other properties that have on-site wells and they're not metered. And not that long ago, LOCAC took up a matter at 301 Los Osos Valley Road, the nursery there, and they had an opportunity to require installation of a meter for that well, and they specifically declined to do so. So I really have to question the sincerity of some of the folks that are whining about the absence of water flow meters on these various properties. They had a chance to get one, and they passed on it. So I don't think they're really sincere. That's all I had. Thank you.
There's no further public comment online.
Okay, and I see none here in the boardroom. So with that, we'll go on to our action items.
Chuck, is
Yes.
it okay if I address one of the comments that
Yes.
Jeff made? I I'm actually a proponent also of identifying any wells in our basin that may be unused. I know DWR does have a, a requirement that unused abandoned wells should be destroyed. So I think our basin, that's particularly important because we have an upper aquifer problem of nitrate, and we are seeing increases in nitrate in the lower aquifer, which is, I mean, it's entirely possible that we're seeing that leakage because we have wells that are a conduit from the upper to the lower aquifer. So I do think that is actually a very important item that our committee should address.
I agree. And I think that under review, staff review of that that database is where we're at. It's been compiled, I think.
Yeah, so the well database project has been completed. All the available information that the BMC hydrogeologist could obtain was compiled, digitized, and is now included in a GIS-based well database. We've reviewed that data set for confidential information. That information has been removed. All of the purveyors have had a chance to review the data set for any information on their wells that they wouldn't be comfortable being made available or is confidential. And so, yeah, that project is essentially done. And that data set is currently in use by the BMC's hydrogeologists for development of the transient model and other reference materials. We can bring this to the BMC. We can, make it publicly available. It is one of the things, it's a database. So, it's not the most user-friendly, accessible format, but I mean, those that are familiar with databases could have access to it. So we're kind of working on what's the best way to make that available if that's the desire. But yeah, the project is done and can be a data set that we can utilize to look at well abandonment program as well as other initiatives.
Okay, that might be something in the future. The way to use that, if there's potential for well abandonment, then that would be good. Okay, let's see. Action item 9A, sustainable yield estimate for 2024.
Yes. So item 9A, obviously the sustainable yield estimate is critically important for the Los Osos Basin. It's what we base our basin yield metric on. It's our best estimate of the amount of water that we can sustainably pump from the basin. And, something that the BMC spent a lot of time on in 2021 when we updated the sustainable yield estimate. This item really is to establish the sustainable yield estimate for 2024, and really is not that exciting in the fact that we're recommending that we keep the same sustainable yield estimate that we adopted in 2021. We have not seen and made any major updates to our understanding of the basin. We have not implemented significant new infrastructure projects that would change the sustainable yield of the basin. We're working on a couple of those in the second program, Seawell, that the CSD is working on, and other initiatives, but none of those are anticipated to be completed in 2024. And so the staff recommendation is to maintain the current sustainable yield of 2,380 acre feet per year.
Yeah, until we have a transient model or some new projects that indicate there's a need for reevaluation of that number. I understand that. So I guess one by one, we're going to look at these and take public comment okay.
Four more action items.
Okay, so do we have public comment on action item 9A?
If you'd like to make a public comment, please raise your hand or come up to the podium. Patrick, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. The Department of Water Resources has quite a bit to say about sustainable yield in a sustainable water basin. What they do say is, and I quote, sustainable yield can only be reached if the basin is not experiencing undesirable results. And they warn that pumping below a modeled sustainable yield does not demonstrate basin sustainability. Sustainability is only demonstrated by avoiding undesirable results of the 6 sustainability indicators. And that's end of quote. Land subsidence is one of those indicators, which luckily we're not having to deal with, but the other 5 are a problem. One is significant and unreasonable reduction of groundwater storage, which we are experiencing. Significant and unreasonable seawater intrusion, which we are definitely experiencing. Significant and unreasonable degraded water quality, including the migration of contaminant plumes that impair water supplies, which we are definitely experiencing, and depletion of interconnected surface water, such as the Los Osos Creek, which has been dry most of the last decade. I would caution that the 2380 acre feet yearly is not a sustainable yield, any more than the 2760 you used for the previous 6 years. Sure, during those 6 years, the BYM was looking good at 72% of the 2,000 acre feet production rate. But as it says in the basin plan, there are two ways to balance the BYM and the sustainable yield. Either raise the sustainable yield or decrease the production amount. So all you did was increase the sustainable yield. The BYM of 72 is just the result of some math from doing so. Until you have the monitoring wells you need, your sustainable yield is going to be based on guesswork. Even with the 2380, you're still technically in overdraft because the BYM is 84%, and you're required to be under 80% with a 20% buffer. So you can either make more assumptions and estimates and once again raise the sustainable yield, or you can reduce the amount of extraction from the basin. I wonder which one you'll be doing. Thank you.
There is no further public comment online.
Okay, we have some here in the boardroom.
Becky McFarland, just a short one. And it is about the basin metric yield along with the sustainable yield. It was 84 and it's supposed to be 80 or less. And I realized that happened. That was the third year of a drought. But we are planning on, I mean, we just need to plan on that in California. We're going to have more drought. And so maybe the yield does need to be brought down so that we are 80% or less, not going over to 84. Because, I mean, isn't that the goal? Aren't we supposed to be meeting that goal? And we've only met that goal, I think, once. So please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Okay, that looks like it for public comment here in the boardroom. So direction to staff, I guess we're going to proceed with that number again for this year. I don't see any changes being made.
And there's an action item request to approve. So I'll move staff's recommendation to approve the continued use of that 2380 as a sustainable yield.
Thank you. You have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, action item 9B, the Los Osos stream gauge rating curve.
Yeah, and I'll just move through this one pretty quickly. One of the other initiatives that we completed in 2023 was development of a rating curve for the Los Osos stream gauge. This has been an initiative that the BMC has been funding and trying to complete for a number of years, but unfortunately we did not receive enough rainfall in 2020, 2021, and or 2022 to really get Los Osos Creek flowing for both extended periods of time but also at higher flow rates, which really was necessary, or at least we thought was necessary to develop a rating curve. And so thanks to the historic rainfall of 2023, we were able to get out into the field I should say the BMC's hydrogeologist who's qualified to do this work to get out in the field and collect stream flow measurements at different points and times associated with some of the larger storms that we got in 2023. And then so with that data, they are able to create a correlation between the water level in the creek and the amount of water that's flowing by when the water is at that level. And that's how you create your curve, which is we show here. And then what we can do with this curve, now that we've created it, is the county or the flood control district, I believe is the owner of that gauge, is taking continuous measurements of the water level in Los Osos Creek. And I encourage you to check it out on waterresources.slocounty.org. You can monitor in real time how much water is flowing in that creek. And then we can using this curve, translate that to a volume of water, because we can really only continuously measure the level, but with a curve, we can translate that to volume, which is an important piece of data for our understanding of recharge into the Los Osos Basin, as well as a critical input to the transient model. And one of the things that Cleith geologist was able to do is, with this updated rating curve, put together estimates of stream flow in Los Osos Creek from 1976 to 2023. And you can see it's highly variable. And if any of you that have spent much time in and around Los Osos Creek know that, it's in some years we have little to no flow. The creek does not really start flowing unless we get a certain amount of rainfall. And then in those wetter or wettest years, we can have as much as almost 20,000 acre feet of water flow through Los Osos Creek. In 2023 was a wet year, and the estimate was 15,426 acre feet per year. So again, important information. This will be good inputs for the transient model and other initiatives. So just wanted to kind of share this, well, the curve and the TM, and then some of the analysis that was done with that as an informational item for the BMC.
Great. Yeah, this has been a long time coming, and good. Every piece of information is good. Do we have any public comment on action item 9B?
If you'd like to make a public comment, please raise your hand or come up to the podium. Jeff, you just have to unmute yourself.
Yes, my name is Jeff Edwards, and I think this effort dovetails beautifully with an idea I've advanced in the past, and that is the development of an inflatable dam on the south side of Los Osos Valley Road at the creek, on the bridge there, or adjacent to the bridge. We know one of the main results of climate change is going to be extended periods of drought, and then conversely, we're going to get heavy rainfalls, periods of heavy rainfall, like the 13 atmospheric rivers we had in 2023. To be able to take advantage of those atmospheric rivers, I think this low-tech, low-cost approach to backing the water up, basically in the creek, will allow the lower aquifer to recharge more substantially. We know that zones D and E, or the lower aquifer, daylight at the creek bottom about a half a mile south of Los Osos Valley Road. So in damming, in inflating the inflatable dam, we will achieve backing the flow up and this resulting increased recharge. This is a periodic project, not only from year to year, but seasonally. Obviously, it would be functioning really in the late winter, early springtime. So I think this is a project that we need to pursue as soon as possible. This is in effect a stormwater capture, but it's so low tech and low cost that we're letting Mother Nature do the work. So again, I'd ask the committee to make this a priority, direct staff to look into the possibilities. While the permitting requirements may be fairly substantial, I think the low tech and low cost nature of this really offsets any other challenges. So given the construct of our basin, geologically, I think this is a natural. So I'd urge, again, pursuit of this project. Thank you.
There is no further public comment online.
Okay, thank you for that. We have no, yes, we do have public comment here in the boardroom.
Becky McFarland, and I'm sorry, this is a question comment, but I'm curious about the new planned well that's supposed to be over on Andre, that will, go down to the aquifer there. And then, there are other wells and agriculture on the other side. Could someone explain the effects of that pumping on the stream flow? That's how it connects to this, because in dry years, people are pumping more water. And so is that drawing that stream flow down? Thank you.
Okay, that looks like it for public comment here in the boardroom. boy, as far as that last comment, I would assume that anytime that as we analyze a new well, that we're going to be putting in the effects of that well upon all surrounding wells, upon the water table, upon everything is going to have to be part of the analysis. I don't know what else to say about that. In terms of moving ahead with the inflatable dam, I think that's probably something to keep in mind. I don't know if I'm ready to take on permitting challenges for that kind of thing. And I don't know what right of way, what the creek even looks like over there. Flooding issues, you're going to be backing up water into adjacent properties. I don't know. That's a lot to think about. I think for now, maybe we just accept the technical memorandum.
I'm certainly ready to do that, but I'd be curious, the question of interconnectivity of surface water and groundwater is a Sigma concept. Do we have any information about the surface water interconnectivity?
That is always a complicated question. And confining layers and depth of pumping and quantities of pumping all tend to factor into whether or not there are impacts of groundwater pumping on surface water resources. That is, as you point out, that's a significant challenge that I think is being wrestled with, and with respect to Sigma and many of the basins throughout California. How are they assessing groundwater pumping impacts to surface water? I believe there has been recent framework and guidance released by DWR on potential ways to tackle that. And I think the transient model is really envisioned as a tool set to help us be able to better analyze those types of impacts.
I think that was the key, and that's what I noted from the display of the actual numbers. So first of all, the development of this gauge, the rating curve is absolutely, let's do it. It's can certainly make the motion to approve it, but it's interesting to me that as you look at the high variability and randomness of this, the average really means next to nothing, and that it diverges so greatly from the median is telling of that. So your comment that this information is what we're looking for is this data input to the transient model is going to be good. I think the question of interconnectivity of the wells is a second order effect that, at a point down the line when we're refining our management, maybe that's something to look at, but I don't see that as a major issue right now.
I have one comment on this as well. So the map, I thought the map was great to highlight the creek and its location within our basin. One thing I do kind of, I think about is the county has the remediation site for the landfill that has tested with obviously VOCs, which they remediate for, but it also has had PFAS. And so, yeah, interconnected surface water, the creek is essentially a great way for those contaminants to potentially be mobilized and possibly brought into the area of these new wells that we may want to develop. And so my thought on this is I would just encourage any purveyor that is doing any test wells to be sure that, even if it's not regulated, perhaps that PFAS is included in these, not only for their own knowledge, but also for the basin to understand possibly location and plume of the PFAS that may or may not be coming from the remediation site.
This is a receive and file, but
Right.
Certainly I think our commentary is go forth and use this. Sounds great.
Yes, I think that's the general consensus here, unless I hear objection otherwise. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to jump to the budget while you're still here?
Yes, let's do that.
Well, and one thing I would request, I know we're short on time. The next two items are tied together. Maybe we could take them as one item.
Why not?
Okay.
And I will push through as quickly as I can. So item 9C is proposed accounting and related procedure modifications to the BMC rules and regulations, as well as consideration for approval, a resolution authorizing the BMC executive director to open a bank account. So this is really the framework that is being proposed by BMC staff and fully supported by BMC party staff for how the BMC's generates its funding and manages its funding. And then the budget is really the sort of the official action that makes that funding available to put this framework into place and receive the benefits that this framework will allow for. And so number of items in your packet. One, first is an updated proposal for the BMC rules and regulations document. We have a document. It outlines the rules and regulations that we must abide by. And so the thought was, and I think it was a good thought, that this is a good document for us to memorialize what are the rules and regulations relative to funding and invoice review and approval that the BMC has adopted. And so we've put together those proposed changes in the rules and regulations document, and it includes a bank account, a BMC accountant role, the updated invoicing procedures, the invoice review and approval procedures, and then some executive director authorizations for utilizing small amounts of contingency funding. There was also a recommendation to include a revision control. So this was not included in the agenda packet. This is something that came to me before the meeting. All this is just a preamble to the document that says that there are multiple versions of this document out there, and that make sure that you have the latest version and that when those versions were adopted. And I thought that actually was good input, just to make sure that somebody doesn't get confused looking at a different, an older version of the document when trying to understand how the BMC operates. And so that we can decide to add that or not. That's not necessarily that critical, but the adoption of the rules and regulations and the bank account authorization are critical to move forward with the new procedures. So we talked about the resolution, and then finally we have the BMC budget. And so included in the proposed budget for 2024 is funding for the BMC accountant. That would be the third-party accountant that would monitor fundings in the BMC bank account and provide detailed reports to the BMC. It would also include BMC website hosting. That's something that the county has requested that the BMC take on. And so we've incorporated funding for that. And then additionally, peer review services for continued support for the water recycling funding program study and transient model, and then budget for groundwater monitoring improvements. We've made great progress in the last 2 years with improvements to the Farrow well. And then, as we just talked about earlier, construction of the Skyline monitoring well. We'd like to continue that progress, continue to leverage the funding that the National Estuary Program has made available, and continue to improve our monitoring network. And so here's the proposed BMC budget for 2024. This is the same budget that we previewed at our last meeting in October. And then additionally included in your packet are the consultant proposals associated or necessary to perform the BMC activities. And so that concludes my presentation of both items 9C and 9D, and happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead.
So I would like to recommend that we do a revision control. I think that would be a good way to track these, because as we change our policy over time, it's good to know which one we're referring to. So
yeah, and it could be as simple as this is language that was proposed that I edited slightly, and it could be this specific language, and it really all it is just documenting what version of this document is being presented and what historical versions may have previously been approved and or modified.
And you think that goes as a cover sheet to the?
Yeah, it'd be a cover sheet to the rules and regulations. It's industry standard in a lot of areas, and one that we could apply here.
The allocation for monitoring, do we have a next well in mind? I know there was a list from Cleith Harris. Where are we going next?
Yeah, so based on the funding availability, we are recommending there are 2 additional wells, and Ron, you might need to help me with that. I believe one is at the end of Palisades.
Correct. The CSD obtained ownership from USGS
Yes, that's right.
of a well at the end of Palisades, the paved area of Palisades. And then we're working with the county, with Mr. Reilly on a county well at the area between around Broderson and LLVR.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And
Okay,
we're looking to transfer ownership of that one.
okay. So do we have any further comments here? Without that, we'll go to public comment for a combined action item 9C and D regarding the modifications to our rules and regulations regarding accounting and the budget for 2024.
If you'd like to make a public comment, please raise your hand or come up to the podium. There is no public comment online.
Okay, and I don't see any here in the boardroom. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to set these changes into play.
I had one comment.
Yes.
On the language, on the authorizing resolution, paragraph 1, to change that to the executive director is hereby authorized to open and maintain the bank account or accounts, and to add in compliance with the BMC rules and regulations at the end of that.
Okay.
That was it. Just a little language change.
Don't think we need a lawyer in the room to.
Yeah, no, I don't see an issue with that language addition.
Okay.
So move staff's recommendation with that and the revision control language added. And approval of budget as well. Or do you want those in separate motions?
Might just be cleaner that way. Why don't we do 9C?
9C.
So
Okay.
that would be the rules and regulations, adoption, the BMC bank account, authorization with the proposed change from alternate director Cook, and the revision control addition as well.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. We'll go on to action item 9D, the budget for calendar year 2024.
And I'll move staff's recommendation on that.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, perfect. We got those things done. Good. That's some good change to our accounting procedures. New monitoring wells. Excellent. And we're right on time. Thanks, everyone. Meeting adjourned.